conference on environmental health. And thank you for joining us out there in social media land on Facebook, the Dr. Walter L. Smith Library and Museum Facebook page. I see people on the laptop. I love it. I love it. That means you're emailing about stuff that's going on right now. I love that. I love that. If you have your laptop out and your cell phones out, remind you to please go to the Dr. Walter L. Smith Library and Museum Facebook page and share these videos with folks on your contact list. Encourage them to watch this live right now on Facebook Live. All right. I want to acknowledge the presence of Brother John Callery. John Callery is one of those people who is working here in Hillsborough County to maintain the culture, the cigar culture of the cigar city, the cigar capital of the world right here in Tampa, Florida. John, thank you for the work that you do. Every year you have, what's it called? The cigar, what's it called?
Tampa Cigar Week.
Tampa Cigar Week. So check them out every year in March, right? In March. They just had it. And my man Bear just walked in. There you go. That's his partner. They've been doing this thing for about 5 years now, right?
Going on
5 years. 5 years. So if you are a connoisseur of fine cigars, going out there and come check them out every month.
Always.
Well, always. Yeah, that's right. Check them out always. All right, everybody. We are on the final stretch, as I said before. We're now calling the panel up for soil and food. So our first panelist, we're going to call Dr. Comey. Where are you? Yeah. Dr. Comey. On a piece. Now, I know I said it right. I'm Nigerian. I checked it. I'm Nigerian. All right. Then we have Mr. Howard Dunn. Yes. Now we have Ms. Erica Hardison. And we have Ms. Alina Young Green. Yes. Another one trying to sneak in here. All right. So this is very, very important as we start to look at other aspects of our environmental lives, if you will. We talk about the food desert. We talk about black farmers. We talk about what we quite often do not go into is the deeper dive regarding the issue of farming, regarding the disparities of farming when it comes to our black farmers. There are some portions that need to be discussed that people have no idea about. When we start to look at the issue of urban farming, urban cultivation of our foods, we have, in many instances, moved away from that because that was our culture, what we did for a long time, because most of us were found right here in the South. And at the turn of the century, after slavery, we saw the mass migration of folks going to the north and out west. And so now we have, as times moved on, we see people moved away from the agricultural aspect of it. And so but we have to remember, there is such a thing as black farmers, okay? And so we want to make sure people are able to identify who these people are, to work with them, to network with them, and to support them. We have seen a lot of plights. We're going to talk about some of those plights, especially when it comes down to the environmental impacts on these farms. Okay, So, we're going to start right here with Ms. Lena. Go ahead and in 2 minutes, introduce yourself and let folks know a little bit about what you're doing. All right?
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here. Thank you for organizing this first inaugural annual event. We know that this time and attention to these issues are important, but it seems way more important today as we look at our environment. My name is Lena Young Green. I'm a community activist, very annoyingly so. One of the things that we focus on is gardening, not just gardening though, but community gardening. As we talk about our food insecurities and our economic impact in our communities for our lesser capable communities. We recognize that if we teach and we learn about gardening, that we have vision of being self-sufficient, self-sustaining, and in addition to that, gardening has the ability to make us financially okay. So those are the areas that we focus on. And even more beyond the gardening, the most important piece of what we do is the community. So we can't do gardening without community. Spend a lot of time building the community and then demonstrating benefits of gardening.
Thank you. Eric Morris.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
How's it going? My name is Erica Hardison, and I am with One Community Grocery Co-op and Cooperation Works. And so One Community Grocery Co-op is a startup grocery store for South St. Petersburg using the cooperative model. And so I was hearing Miss Lena talk, and I'm like, hey, that sounds a lot like me. So I'll try to keep it short. I am a community activist, an advocate, a mother, a daughter, and all those other things that people call me for and that anyone can name. It's crazy. But like Ms. Lena said, what I'm most passionate about and what moves me and all the things in my soul is community, right? Because in the co-op world, we always like to use the term we're stronger together, right? And that's the truth. We are stronger together. So at One Community Grocery Co-op, we always say we are more than a grocery store. We're about providing healthy food access. We want to be self-sufficient, independent, self-determined, and sovereign. And I hope we get to talk a little bit more about that on this panel, because food and the soil, just like Ms. Lena said, can give us that. And we're about economic empowerment. Because when we talk about thriving communities, it's great to have services, it's great to have stuff, but if we don't have the resources and dollars that it takes to move things, we will always be relying on someone else. And Dr. Comey, Howard Gunn will tell you, farming, working in the soil can give you that freedom. So I hope that's enough.
All right. Howard Gunn.
I want to say good evening, everyone. Good afternoon. It's indeed a pleasure to be here, especially on yesterday when we was here at 9 o'clock and we heard all those wonderful speakers and he closed out the day. I am an agriculturalist, a black farmer, right, Tuskegee in agriculture.
That's all right.
Well,
You know, I guess when you get there, you get something about the water in Tuskegee because you have to learn about George Washington Carver. And most of you probably heard of George Washington Carver. scientist, and we had to recite him while we was there. So this just got in my blood. But that didn't start there in Tuskegee. It started in Mississippi in a place called Egypt, Mississippi, the family farm. Growing up there with my grandparents, and on the farm until I was aged enough to go to the school system, which was 6. So I got a lot of my training between 0 and 6 at the grandmother's farm. She had 40 acres. I don't know if the mules included or not. She had 40 acres, and we still own the 40 acres. And we have increased those 40 acres to about 400 acres because we bought land. And I can't overemphasize the importance of buying land, whether you buy a house or just buy some property, because they make no more land. We was fortunate enough to afford it because someone held the mortgage. And we're going to talk about land ownership, how you can own land without going through the banks. Because as you know, we were discriminated against for years with the farmers, the Black Farmers Administration, with the state and the federal government holding, I don't know how to put this because it's so embarrassing to think that our United States government would not give loans to blacks during the 60s and 50s when we lost most of our land. We only owned about 1.2 million acres of land compared to 1921 where we had 15 million acres of land. That's crazy when you think about it. And you can't get this land back. They're not selling this land back to you. If they are, you can't afford it. So I got interested in agriculture at a very young age. There's something about the soil. When you're young and you smell the dust that comes from the plow, it gets into you. And you never forget it no matter where you go. And that happened to me. Horses ever since I was 8 years old, horses to college, horses now, thoroughbreds, quarter horses, any kind of horse. We farm down about 300 acres of land where we run beef cattle in Brooksville, thanks to the University of Florida who leases the land to us. Well, excuse me. Whatever.
Yes.
It's all right. They are the university.
They are the university. That's right. But we work closely with all the universities. With UF as well, A&M University, Tuskegee, and yeah. But my concern is, where will we be in the next 20 years with the population that we're seeing now? Kids are not interested in agriculture. They're interested in making money, but agriculture doesn't always seem as if you're making money, but it does give you a sense of satisfaction. I spend most of my time outdoors, and we was talking yesterday about ACs and staying in there, getting the mold in your house and all of this because of your ducts, your AC is not, kids spend too much time indoors. Spend some time outdoors. My wife knows when I get up in the morning at 5:30, I don't come back in the house until 6. I'm out on the tractor, I'm out doing cattle work, I'm out gardening or landscaping, which is one of my prized things. I'm a horticulturalist as well. But I'm never bored in agriculture. I can find something, and you can too, that is related to agriculture. No matter what profession that you're in, it's ag related. And we must forget that. But one of the biggest problems here now is children not being exposed to the agricultural system. We was teaching school, we taught 4-H and FFA, Future Farmers of America. Taught them how to speak, taught them how to grow cattle, taught them how to do these things, and they get this opportunity to go to college for that, veterinary medicine. But we don't have enough people involved in agriculture. There's grants and loans out there begging you to go to school. Another thing, and I know we're going to talk about it a little later on, is food insecurity. I think Sister mentioned that. Where did food come from? Who's growing it? Who inoculated that cow and that grain of food, that corn? The Monsanto put something special in the corn that you can't reproduce the corn? I mean, all these things are serious, and you're eating this stuff. Do you know what you're eating? Know your food, know your farmer. Know your farmer, know your food. And this is going to be crucial. But we can go further up there's some of the things that will come up. We're close with Dr. Comey there at Tuskegee. There at Florida University. But we yeah, but that's who I am. I'm a retiree, consultant now, and we do work with the school system with providing food, nutritious food. My wife is here, nutritious food to the schools. Unfortunately, we had to stop the program because of the federal cuts. to the school.
Well, we did, that's good. The family, that's good.
Thank you. Thank you. Go ahead.
All right, Dr. Kobe?
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Coleman. I'm called ONM officer, and I've been in the U.S. for 45 years. I came to the States as a graduate student, which is a bad word today. I did my PhD in forest genetics and tree breeding. So my background is in breeding and genetics. But I also minored in soil science, which was very impressive for me. But how did I get to be in agriculture? Dr. Walter Smith talked about brain drain yesterday. Yes, from one of those brain drains. Grandpa was the biggest farmer in the village. We farmed with him until I was 10 years old. And Dad was a civil servant. He had to put me through school. And back in my mom's days, women were not allowed to go to school. So she was home. And all my brothers became professionals. In fact, my respected late uncle became a water resource engineer, and in fact, when he passed, he was head of environmental water resource engineering at Texas Southern University before he passed a few years back. The goal was to come, get a PhD, and return home because I was already fully engaged at the Rubber Research Institute of Nigeria. And so it's very funny. I got into agriculture because I was already in agriculture as a kid. It's always nice to have a good sibling rivalry. my immediate junior sister, who is late now, Josephine, we call her Jo, was in the School of Nursing, almost graduating, and back then when you're in the School of Nursing, you get paid. So a lot of females went to the School of Nursing, and I was finishing high school, and one of our zoology assignment was to dissect cockroach, rats, and rabbits. So she was on break one day, and she came home, and she saw how my hands were shaking with the cockroach. I said, brother, what are you doing? Your hands are shaking with a cockroach? What's going to happen when you have a human being in front of you? That was the end of medicine. So I said, it's going to be like geology or pharmacy. So one day as to fill in my application, Dad comes in and says, your grandpa is the biggest farmer in the village. He's also the biggest aquaculturist. You know how they were doing aquaculture here? You see the Mississippi River? During the rainy season, we're from Delta State, and you've heard about the Nigerian Delta and all the issues before Shell. And I'm going to leave that story for now. Wow. Grandpa used to have as many ponds as you have in this room. So during the flood season, all of those ponds filled up from the Niger River that came from the north. And then as kids, we were going when the flood, it's like when the flood season is over, we use baskets to go to each pond. So you see, those were aquaculture ponds, right? That's what I tell people that we were doing aquaculture before aquaculture became hip. So so I got into university and started doing agriculture. And we're going to talk about soil because I just finished an online course that I co-taught with others for Ms. Harriet Paul, who is the Director of International Program at Florida A&M University. And this brings me to how did I get to FAMU. When I finished at Iowa State University, We have a huge George Washington Carver hall. So you got to go into that hall and see all the pictures. And you are at Iowa State University, because that's where you go to do quantitative genetics. And the state has only 2% black folks. You walk into George Washington Carver Hall, and you're wondering. And then I just told my wife, we cannot return to Nigeria without getting the black experience. In case you want to know, my baptismal name is Anthony. Don't call me that though. So I applied to, back then there were no Google or anything. I went to the library, got my microfiches, and searched for all the HBCUs, including Tuskegee. And then I sent my resume to all of them, and FAMU invited me for an interview. And the rest, as they say, is history. I did my career there. Here, where President Walter Smith comes in. The Center for Viticulture and Small Fruit Research is the only legislative agricultural center on FAMU campus. President Smith worked in 76 and 77 to get that done. I came there in 86. You saw the vineyards on campus from 1986 to 2001. I planted those grapes. The center is now on Highway 90 and is now an internationally respected center. Yes. What President Smith did was to have the kid hire some of us who had brain drain. My boss was Dr. Lamikon, food scientist, processing wine. I was a plant breeder. By this time, Dr. Humphreys had become president. The Dean Key and Dr. Humphreys, President Humphreys, sat us down as we are here today. Gentlemen, IFAS, normally we don't refer to the University of Florida. IFAS is trying to take this center from us. Because they think black folks who cannot do research on grapes. You guys are to ensure that this legislative center is not the only way it can be taken, is that another congressman or senator will write a bill to say, oh, FAMU cannot handle it. We demonstrated that FAMU could develop an internationally recognized Center for Viticulture and Small Research. So, I'm going to leave it there. Now that you have my attention, I want to donate these books to the library.
You bet.
Before we don't mind, so let me start with this one. This is Growing Up, Tony John's Assistant. This is the first book I wrote, autobiographical. This other one is Rubber Seed. Rubber Seed, we've all driven our cars here today, right? Now we're talking about technobarons, right? Before technobarons, there were rubber barons. We will leave that story aside. All your all your airplane tires are in 100% natural rubber. And all your car tires that you call auto radio are 60-40. That is 60% synthetic and 40% natural rubber. And all your condoms are natural rubber. So this rubber seed is what God blessed me as a rubber research scientist, as a rubber scientist in Nigeria, to join an international team in Brazil for 4 months in the Amazon rainforest, collecting rubber seed. Yeah, I'm still out of it. There were scientists from Asia. If there's a disease today that stops Brazil and Latin America from the world leading producer of natural rubber, Goodyear, Firestone, all those guys tried very hard to put plantations in there. You know where the major rubber plantations are today? Southeast Asia. They produce 90% of the rubber. If that disease were to hit those, I don't know how many of you will fly. 10% of it is produced in West Africa. You've heard about the Firestone plantations in Nigeria, yes. But that is rubber seed. This is my first flight to port on Panama. Now I repeated myself. How many folks here flew on Panama? All right, back when they were called what? Stewardesses. And you have to dress up. So, and then when they saw a young black man like me, they were wondering who is paying your fare. so that's that. And this is an updated issue of growing up. And about 25 years ago, I had an NSF grant with a faculty member at Florida State University. That NSF grant was trying to train kids, 6th grade to 9th graders, on how to pollinate corn. So this book won the Florida Authors and Publishers Association Silver Award in 2021. All right, we're going to talk about soil and food. All right.
Great.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Coleman. Appreciate that. Okay. So, wow. That's really something. Thank you. I can't thank you enough. Okay, so two names come to mind, or a couple of things come to mind as I go into this. The names of organizations, and one is the UNIA, right? Marcus Garvey. Marcus Garvey. The Nation of Islam. When we think of those two organizations, if you know anything about the history of those organizations, they were very instrumental in creating the concept of self-sufficiency in what they call the New Negro movement. And they worked hard to establish their own farms, fisheries, and so forth. And so that stood out to me as an historian. That stuck out to me because as we talk about this, the issue of self-sufficiency comes to mind. Our ability to do for self, our ability to grow our own foods is something that was a part of our culture. It's always been a part of our culture, who we are. But now, so many people have moved away from it, right? Why is that? What do we see? What is happening? What happened that moved us so far away, this generation, so far away from agriculture?
I think one of the things is the fact that it's not always presented in a way that you would cherish. When you think about farming, as I was growing up, you see an older black man on a tractor, barely working in the overalls and a patterned hat. As a child, you saw that image. It's not something you wanted to be. You wanted something better than that, not knowing that was good. And I think that image had a lot to do with, I'm not going to be that. I'm going to the city. I'm going to get a job. I'm going to college. And I'm not coming back to this farm. Little did we know that farm was used during the civil rights movement to get Dr. Martin Luther King out of jail because it was property. So we didn't see the value at that time. But if you remember Selma, Alabama, marches and all those got arrested, those, some of the biggest black farmers came out of that area.
Right. You saw people with coveralls and just walking down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they had land, so when they had to present a bond, they put the land on. So we didn't see it from that perspective, and it wasn't shown that way. So we had a bad attitude about, even becoming a farmer. And I think that's one of the reasons we have a few farmers today, because of image.
Right. Anybody else?
And I can agree, but on the other side of that, when, if I ask Howard how much a tractor costs, right, compared to the cars that we may drive, and how much land costs, how much the barn, all of those things that take to run a farm cost, people are rich, right? And we saw through the Discrimination Financial Assistance Program that how much had to be leveraged so that people could get loans when they own their property, a lot of times outright. So when we look at things, it's like you said, Howard, it's a matter of perspective, right? The historical context, what we have been told, what we have experienced through land. I mean, I always tell people I've had a great food journey. I love food. No, and let it be said here, I am vegan. So sometimes my food options may be limited, but I tell you they are unlimited, because when you think of how many agricultural products or produce is out there compared to the types of meat that are available, I tell you, I eat higher than the hog every day. So it really is a matter of perspective, and then going back here to community, right? We have, when we till the soil together, when you are out there from daybreak to the end, to the early evening, a lot of times there can be solitude, but you're never in solitude when you're in nature. I saw my brother with the Sierra Club shirt on, and it said, outdoor friends, let's make friends. And so I wake up, even though I live in an urban setting, and I hear bluebird, I see so much wildlife and so much life. And that is what soil and food gives to us that nothing else can. It's that life energy, that substance that as a community can only bring together. So it's a matter of perspective and how we see things, and also investing in it and not letting people divest in it. Or, I understand, Dr. Coleman, we're glad to have you, but I am sure your people ask you to come home all the time, because we need that knowledge. We need that knowledge in our communities, because without it, what does it say, who without knowledge perishes, right? And so we need that knowledge.
So from another perspective, one of the things that we do most, talk about the urban environment, is we work with children. Children, young people are our passion, our focus. And I'll just use our garden that is close to our community center as an example. We decided that we were going to build a garden about 15 years ago. It took us years to be able to get the agreement with the Department of Transportation, because we are on their property, and we believe that we have better use for the properties that the department acquires than the reason for which they acquired it. So we go about making sure we could get as much of their property as possible. But we've served children for 20-some years. When we started the garden, it was just an open space, and we would bring the children out, and all they could think about was the heat and the bugs. That was where they wanted to be. And at that time, you would ask the children, where did their food come from? This connection is so very deep with our younger populations. And they would tell you without hesitation that their food comes from this supermarket. Excuse me. And there was no argument with them from their parents because there was no connection to grandparents. One of the things we are very proud of now is that the younger children that we bring into the garden now, they'll come into the garden and want to know, what are we eating today? So they've connected now that they'll take that seed, and with that seed, they'll plant it through the season, nourish, and they'll know that they'll be able to get food from that seed. And I tell you, that is exciting. Before COVID, we would have them take their whatever they grew, and on Fridays they would set up a little market and tell the community to come and buy. So now they're understanding that the seed could feed them, but that seed also has the ability for them to make money. This is exciting stuff. And one of the things that we hear from the parents when the children get excited about what they buy, what they've grown, and what they've prepared in the kitchen, we have to take this home so our parents could taste this, or our parents could see this. And what we've heard from the parents, when they make a comment, oh, I remember working in the garden with my grandparent, right? So that showed that we had a disconnection in a generation, but grandparents still had the memory, and they were able to associate with the parent, who the child now brings back the memory to the parent. So there is a disconnection that happened maybe during the industrial shift, maybe when we moved off of the farms and moved into the urban areas, and that happened. But working with these children, it's awesome to be able to get them so excited about what they're doing, take it home, and then parents remember. So perhaps somewhere in the process, we have to think about what grandparents experienced, the time that they spent with their hands in the soil, that parents connected with. And somehow we have to bring our younger people, our babies, into that experience, which we know is such a natural thing.
I know growing up in Tallahassee, my dad used to, he had bought a, Dr. Coleman knows about this, we bought a vineyard. We were the only black people in the entire state of Florida that owned a vineyard. And we had acres of land. And I think Dr. Coleman, you came out there a couple of times, right? Helped us with the grape stuff. And I remember we hated it. Oh, we hated every minute of it because of the work that was involved. My brother and I had to go out there and put the posts in the ground and run the lines and mow the grass and hoe everything up and get the weeds out and stuff. And you know, until we actually had a sprinkler system, we had the water, the grapes and stuff like that. So we had to create some sort of irrigation system. So everything was just, it was hard, right? And we didn't appreciate it until I got to high school. When I got to high school, my senior year, I'll never forget, we had grapes, we had a bunch of grapes. And we had different varieties. And I remember going to the vineyard, and I remember cutting a deal with, because we owned the newspaper. So we go to the grocery store in Macomb Street, it's called Macomb Street in Tallahassee, in Frenchtown. And we would go there to the grocery store, and I cut a deal with Owen. Never forget, I cut a deal with Owen. That I would supply him grapes. I noticed we go there I went, got a bunch of different grapes, came up with huge garbage bags, and sat there in my kitchen and just started taking the grapes out, putting them in bags and stuff like that. Went back and sold it to them. When I made that little money, I spent more time at that farm watering and cultivating and learning what to do. It was the greatest thing ever at that point. Now it's gone. Right? Now it's gone. And as I get, and of course now, I have redeemed myself because we just bought a farm in Dunn. And we're buying more land. But as I'm sitting there, I'm thinking to myself, how are we going to, what are we going to do to set the example for this? Because as we look at everything that's happened, I think about my father and how he talked about 4-H Club, how he was president of 4-H Club in Cairo, Georgia, which ultimately led to him being chased out by a lynch mob. But literally, the ability of our children to recognize the value in farming, I believe, comes from their relationship to the history, the relationship to the organization like the 4-H Club. What happened? Because I rarely hear anything about the 4-H Club existing in high schools or middle schools anymore. What happened?
Well, I tell you, as a teacher, with the FFA and the 4-H Club usually started within the communities, and that's your responsibility in your community. You can start your own 4-H. You don't have to be connected to the school system. Whereas FFA, Future Farmers of America, usually start around 6th grade and all the way through high school. And their kids are exposed to agriculture type things. And this is so important that you know this, and your churches should have 4-H club. You should make this a priority. And then there's money associated with that. These kids are selling their animals and showing their animals, and you got people such as Publix, banks, are all going to support these kids during the bidding process. You know, we had a lamb when I was teaching. We had a 7th grade girl show a #1 lamb. My wife remembered. We had the lamb in the backyard. We were supposed to have the lamb in the backyard. But we had the lamb in the backyard because she had no place for it. Eventually, she found a place for the lamb. The lamb was making noise at night. The baby was like, "What is that?" But that lamb became #1. It had been show animal. It won the highest prize. A thoroughbred farmer in Marion County, Florida, one of those big farms, paid $70,000 for that lamb to support that child. And that's what happens when you got people in the community that will support you. You don't know where this money's going to come from. You don't know who's going to bid on your cow. You don't know who's going to bid on your hog. Who's going to bid on your animals. But you have to have these kids exposed. Now, once they saw that, everybody wanted to have a lamb. So then we got their attention. But it starts there. You know, and another thing that you was talking about, Doc, when it comes to farming, you don't see yourself making money in it. But you have to change your thinking because it's more precision farming now. I stress precision farming. Not just farming, being precise with how to farm. I want to know how many drops of water that tomato plant requires. I want to know how much fertilizer that tomato plant requires, that plant. Now we're not wasting anything. We're everything we know this plant. So I can take a greenhouse 70 by 120. I can grow more food in that greenhouse than my dad and my granddad can grow on 5 acres. And this is the concept we have to have because we don't have land no more, not like we used to. So let's tone it down. On an acre of land, you put 3 to 4 greenhouses. Microgreens can bring you over $220,000 a year just growing microgreens for the restaurants. Now, your marketing plan has to be in place, but it's happening. People are doing this. So you don't have to look outside and talking about, I don't have 100 acres to do this and that. No, 2 acres, 3 acres. And you, Doc, you and I have been talking. 10 acres will do more than you can handle. You got your humidity, you got your greenhouse, you got a controlled environment for insects, you got your water. What else is next? So we have to start thinking outside the box. Let's not look at how big, because you're not going to get some of this land back because of development. But you can grow just more efficiently by using the greenhouse systems.
And I like what you're talking about in terms of precision farming and thinking of farming more as a science, right? Because back in the day, people knew the knowledge and had it and used almanacs and things like that. And now we have our auntie and uncle Google and all the things that are tools, right? But how do we use those tools? We can use those tools to benefit us on a small scale, but we can also use those tools to benefit us on a larger scale. But I think, like what Howard was saying, it's the scalability, it's thinking of farming as a business,
Right.
because a lot of times, what I heard a lot is, my father was a farmer, my grandfather was a farmer, and he barely had a 6th grade education, right? But he knew his craft. He knew how much seed was gonna grow. He knew his market, right? What's the sense of growing things? And I have kind of a different opinion on this, because a lot of this and a lot of why people don't get into farming, don't get into agriculture, is because they don't think there's any money in it, right? But as we have seen, we have to move beyond the money, right? We have to look into our own sovereignty, our own ability to take care of ourselves without having to rely on outside resources. And not that we can't rely on outside resources, but who has control of those resources? Because right now, we can have as much land as we want in Florida, right? But let it get hot. Let that water dry up. You will not grow anything, or what you do grow will be very small, right? So how can we look at it as a craft? How can we look at it as science? And like Howard said, do the precision gardening. How do we pass this knowledge from generation to generation? And we do that by making small changes in our own lives. Like, not only do I love food, but I love the environment. I'm not one of these people who want to move to Mars, right? I just want to make sure that we take care of what we have here today. Because if we take care of what we have here today, it has been shown to take care of us. Like Howard said, know your food, know your farmer, know your farmer, know your food. Where does it come from? I tell people the other day, I had tomatoes and lettuce and a beautiful salad right from my backyard. And then I actually live in St. Petersburg, and in St. Petersburg there are so many fruit trees. My neighbors have mangoes, star fruit, avocado. I could eat for days and not go to the grocery store, right? But the fact is that not all of us are gonna do that. So we do need grocery stores, but we need people who are gonna organize grocery stores, farms, and other things that we need in our communities for ourselves, so we can have control over them. So when the hurricane happens, we live in Florida, there's one thing I knew when I moved here, there would be a hurricane. We need to control that system, right? Because if we're getting our avocados from Mexico, and we can grow them right here in Florida, our food travels less food miles, it has less impact on the environment. We know what we're eating, right? It's just like bees. Where's the best honey come from? The honey in your hood. So we have to really understand how we can control these systems, how we can be sovereign, how we can understand our food systems and the processes to produce enough, not only for ourselves, but for our community.
We see the in studying public health and things that we do, and just looking around at how things are done, we look at what's on the shelves in the grocery store. So we read a book, just read a book about why those things are lasting as long as they're lasting, why people are getting sick and so forth. We note the fact that our own FDA and USDA have made decisions. They voted literally to put certain chemicals and things in our foods to keep them, to have them last longer on shelves.
Oh, yeah.
To increase the shelf life and at what cost, right? At what cost? And so as we talk about organic growth, we know that that's important, right? So the old ways, as they call it, the old ways of farming and cultivation of our own fertilizers, right? That have less nitrogen in it, so that it doesn't over nitrify our waters and so forth. So in knowing that, how do we get that information out? How do we do it? How do we do it? Everybody wants to know that one question. How do we do it? Now, I'm starting with you, Mom. I'm starting with you.
So, I'll repeat again, our focus are the children. Adults are good, but adults are growing, and we believe. Some people start with the adults, we start with the children, because children have a way of persuading parents. And with the experience of our children coming into a place where they actually put that seed in the ground, we usually try to make them start with the beets, which is going to produce quickly. They want to see some successes. But the children get excited with the fact that farming and growing is so foreign to them. We've gotten so disconnected from our heritage that this is something new for them, something exciting. And so, with that effort of intentionally now focusing on those children, and then we have to determine why is this fruit that you get in the supermarket is so beautiful and so pretty, no deformities, bright and shiny.
Arsenic.
Yes.
And this fruit or veggie that they've just grown, and we are organic, and we talk about organic, now they could really see for themselves what's the difference. And of course, we know that what you grow tastes differently from it's not only because of the chemicals, it's because your love, your passion, your feeling, you put yourself into that. So when they taste this and taste that, you're able to compare those things. And that sounds very elementary, but for us it's so important. I said that our garden started about 13 years ago. Children grow so fast. So there are some children that were teens 13 years ago are now parents. And you see how quickly the generation turn around and how quickly what they've learned here, just digging in that soil and having the fun of it, now they're able to replicate that with their families and in their homes.
And I will say this. I tell anyone that soil is liberating. And so in terms of how do we get the word out, you have to, number one, we have to read, right? I'm a FAMU graduate. People ask me how I got to FAMU. I said, I read everything. I read everything, and it got me scholarships to where I attended FAMU for free. I actually even got paid to go to school. And people were like, I was like, yeah, because I couldn't read. So that's the biggest gift. At the co-op, we have a program called Books and Beyond, where we have our young people and our families read books. Then they get to go on a field experience, and that builds greater community. And as a cooperator, our fifth principle is education, training, and information. And so we have to get the word out, like each one teach one. Everyone in this room, you don't come by yourself. Like I said in the co-op where we believe we're stronger together. So please don't come to an event by yourself. Bring your friend, your neighbor, your cousin, whoever, the person on the street you just talked to. You have to kind of, what she said too, exude that love and see that passion, because when people see that passion, it's contagious, right? And people want to be part of things that are fun, that are successful, even if the work is hard, right? Because I always say, what do they say, many hands make light work, right? Infuse music, infuse culture. A lot of times, I'm a mathematician, so I'm straightforward. I'm like, we need to get this done. But I'm so thankful for the many people around me who say, like, we're going to have a wine festival. You know what we're going to do? We're going to bring music. We're going to bring this element. Everyone has a part. And be open-minded. So that's how you get the word out. Collaborations, building networks of people. We, again, co-op world, we can't do this by ourselves.
Right.
Cooperate. So cooperate with one another. Don't be afraid to share your ideas. Right? Bring up.
Yes. Seeing is believing. You know, when the kids see you working and you're doing things in the field, they can then believe in you. We live in food deserts. You know, most of our black communities, we are in food deserts. We don't have access to healthy food.
Insecure area.
You know, and that's alarming. When you think about cardiovascular diseases, heart attacks, and diabetes, they're all preventable diseases. But it's what you're eating. And if we can't get the word out through our churches, now again, I have to go back to the church because you got a lot of people living, coming out of the church. We have to get the word out that way. And everyone knows that lives in those communities that they can't go to a Publix because it's not there. They're 4 or 5 miles away from you. So what are you eating? You're eating the stuff that are in process. Usually a Dollar General, or dollar PDs, as I call them, because if you eat there long enough, you're going to have diabetic. You're going to get diabetic. You have to stay away from those stores. They put them in our community. And we run to them. But the food is processed. Have you noticed lately that Dollar General's got a big plan to put vegetables in their store?
Mm-hmm.
That's through the Treasury Department because they classify themselves as a food desert. And they're in a food desert community. Therefore, they get the money that the Treasury gives to food deserts.
I'd be concerned about anything I got to get into. I'd be very concerned about that.
Yeah.
But that's where we are. Go ahead, Doc.
Let me ask you guys a quick question. How many of us have had a banana today?
I have
How many were had yesterday? Have you noticed when you bring your banana home, it's green, right? Within 3 or 4 days, what happens?
brown.
You know what happens when in the store? The natural process of ripening is very, very slow, right? Because the ripening process produces a chemical we call acetylene and ethylene. That same chemical can also suppress or accelerate. What the stores do to keep the banana from ripening is to spray more on that banana. So you go to the store, it's looking fresh and nice, right? You bring it home, you don't have acetylene, you don't have ethylene. And so as all that ethylene evaporates, what happens? The banana just ripens. Next you know, as my wife would say, this thing just got rotten so soon. I said, well, because you don't know what you put in there. You don't know what kept it so fresh when you bought it. So that's I want to circle back to this 4-H
Yes.
and the kids. Because as a recruiter for family for nearly 30 years, be there with our grandparents and see what they did on the farm. Farming has changed tremendously. How many of you here know that many of these oil companies own some of the biggest farms in the Midwest? Probably don't. BP, Shell, Chevron, they own a lot of people. I'm not going to mention Monsanto here because that's a company I did. But these are the folks that, so we have to start getting these kids. One of the things I got happy about is we have a new 4-H program now in Brooksville. And so working with the black farmers, we're trying to show them, there's a black, I think I'm working with all the black farmers. Several sitting out there. So we're working on coffee grinds. And I just finished some work with another black farmer who is applying chicken manure, which our grandparents used to use. And when we test the soil, it takes less than 3 months for all that nitrogen to leave the soil. So it's draining into the system. So we have to show, we just planted 470 blueberries. We need to expose the kids, like we expose somebody called Dr. Smith to growing grapes.
Right.
That's so you could do this whole concept of precision agriculture. That's what we call it. We just installed equipment developed by a fellow black guy, graduate of Alcorn State, where you can now monitor nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium on your cell phone. Yeah, we just installed them. And we're going to continue that experiment that's going to be installed in Georgia, Alabama, and Florida. So these are the kinds of things that interest students. There are some students, when they first come to FAMU, we didn't like agriculture, but you show them these other things, that agriculture is beyond tractor and all that stuff. I have a former student of mine who is teaching at Yale University, teaching geomatics, using satellite to monitor soils and soil-related forest management. So that it all starts with this encouraging the kids to see what happens on site.
And when we don't know what to plant.
Just anecdotally, you guys are right on target. Historically, I grew up in Leon County. Great grandfather had a farm in Gaston County, over there all the time. I did it all. Peanuts, corn, I was on it, butchering a hog, I had it done. Now, the next generation, my father, he loved agriculture. Now, he had an advanced college degree, but he still loved agriculture. So he was out there. I was out there with him. Got married. My father-in-law, very prominent in that family, Dr. Barnes. He was very prominent in the agriculture field. So my daughters, even though I was so busy, I was not out in the gardens that much. Both of their grandfathers, even though they were highly educated, enjoyed being out in the soil. Growing vegetables, growing stuff. And guess what those little girls used to do? Out there with granddaddy. Fast forward. I have 6 granddaughters now. You get out in the sun. Now, the thing about kids, they're very inquisitive. They like to see things grow. Nothing excites them more than putting a seed in the ground and watching that thing pop up. They get so excited about that. They get that drive up, man. You want to see a kid overjoyed? So they start seeing that. Guess what happened? My daughters now say, okay, they got those memories of being in their grandfather. Now they have gone back and they've gotten really excited about it. And guess what they're doing now? Playing gardens with their daughters.
Wow.
That's where that connection comes from. You gotta maintain, because kids One of the best things with family, they used to have the community farm thing on South, on Orange Avenue. You saw people out there all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what I'm talking about. They were living in little plots, and they're growing their vegetables and stuff, and they would have the grandkids out there, or the kids out there. So you're very right. Kids are very interested in agriculture. We just have to give it. And you know what my dad did? You would go, you live in the city, backyard. You go in his yard, you see the grass, you see all these flower beds, right? These little beds. That's what he had in these beds. Peppers, corn, everything. He did it in the city. People would do it. You just gotta get it to them.
My great grandfather was the guy who took care of family's farm. In the early 1900s, turn of the century. And he lived right there on family's camp, lived and died on family's camp. So, you know, he took care of the cows, took care of the farm, made the ice cream for the students, you know, the whole nine. So this, for us, for our family, this goes back a long way.
One of the things that we as community work hard to do is to connect with the academic world. You know, community people will see a problem, we might have no understanding of the research or whatever is out there. There's a problem, we gotta fix it. And we don't necessarily find the best solutions. But one of the things that we work to do is connect with our academic world. Work with the universities that have all of that information in the Ag Tower. Ask them to come out into the community and work with us. One of our projects that we're most proud about is working with Dr. Trox, because she has that same mentality that yes, I teach the students theory in school, but if I bring them into the community and connect with us in the community, we will tell the theorists what we just know. We don't know why it makes sense or anything. And then the theorists have to then connect with what the community knows. And it's important for students then, as they learn, that they hear our community's perspective. But also a part of that is getting our children into this exposure of the university, being able to sit next to a student who says, I'm in college, and maybe mom and dad never went to college, so at home that environment isn't there. But they're sitting next to a student who doesn't look much older than they are. And now we're making that connection. So as community, in order to improve and continue to grow this relationship, we talk about the collaboration. That is so important at the very grassroots level to have you academics be a part of what we do and bring your students so that the learning is on both sides. I think that's one of the very important part of the success for our
All right, what we're gonna do, hold that thought. We're gonna take a break, we're gonna come back, and we're gonna come back to the question again.